This is not a cool thing to say, but I'm a big fan of the original Honda Jazz / Honda Fit, which came out back in 2002. This car is actually the third generation, the one that came out in 2015. And that original Honda Jazz was incredibly well packaged, tiny car, but with huge space inside. What I want to find out is whether this third generation car, the one that came out over 10 years later in 2015, does it still have that DNA? Is it improved, which obviously it should be, with an extra 10 years of development by Honda? So stay tuned in this video to find out. Well, the good news is that this definitely has that original DNA of the Honda Jazz. Spock would be pleased with the third generation, I think, because it feels very much like that first car, like they've continued it on with its ethos, and like the original car, they've put the fuel tank underneath the front seats, instead of the usual place, which is underneath the back seats. And what that means is you've got this incredibly configurable big empty space in which you can put the rear seats into any sort of which way position that you like, which I'll explain a little bit later how that works. The view out the front of the Honda Jazz is kind of like no other car. It's quite a unique look and it's quite strange. It's obviously got these big A-pillar glass sections here, and the whole of the dashboard kind of goes really far out in front of you, and there's no way of seeing the bonnet. Like, that just tails off in front of the car. You may have noticed I'm not in my usual stomping ground for reviewing cars, which is of course the United Kingdom. I'm actually in Cyprus, which is a really wonderful country, a really fantastic place to visit. Something I've noticed with Cyprus is the roads are really smooth, they're really well paved, and there aren't any big potholes and things. And this is good news because this Honda Jazz does have quite a firm ride. It's not the smoothest for a car that Honda admit themselves has an average buyer age of 61. You would expect that kind of buyer would be opting more for the comfortable rides. When you do find a pothole in Cyprus, which is rare, it is quite harsh, and you can hear it quite loudly through the cabin. This car is definitely in its element when you're driving around town in the urban environment where, you know, the car is quite narrow. You feel like you can fit through quite small gaps in it. The visibility is really good because there's a lot of glass all the way down, even with these little tiny A-pillar windows here. It's got very nice and light steering. It's easy to thread the car in and out of traffic, and it just feels like a real good city car. When you start to get a move on in this car and accelerate up to higher speeds, you do find that it's got a fair bit of road noise and a fair bit of wind noise, because it's obviously quite a brick-shaped car and it's slamming through the air, and you get that wind noise. When you're on the motorway, it is quite loud in the cabin, but it's actually fairly well planted on the motorway because it's got a long wheelbase, and if you can put up with that noise, it's not that bad. It's just not as luxurious as some bigger cars. Up front, this car isn't quite as quirky and original as that Honda Jazz from 2002. It's missing that sort of under tray shelf thing that ran across the bottom of the dashboard, but it does have quite a few little cubby holes and places to store things. Now, they're all basically just cut out areas in this center console, like a couple of cup holders, a little tiny tray on the side of the handbrake, another smaller one behind it, a couple more square shaped things which would probably fit cans and other accoutrements, and then of course you've got door side pockets as well, which fit bottles and other things. I would say that it's kind of like gotten a little bit more boring, a little bit more sensible, a little bit more normal in many ways. Like the exterior design of it doesn't look quite as squared off and van-like. It's got this big sculpted line down the side of it, which is quite striking actually for this kind of car, like somebody's just taken a gouge out of it. And then the interior of this car, which is just very modern, very well screwed together, but it's not particularly interesting. It's not plush, it's not luxurious, but all the materials feel like they'll just last forever. One of the big obvious things is the climate controls, which are now a sort of touch-sensitive button panel. They are invisible when you have the car turned off, and when you turn it on, they all come to life and light up. They do work, like they are very responsive, and I've not had the case where I've tried to press them and they've not worked. I'd rather have actual buttons. So it's got to that point in the video where we asked the world's laziest car reviewer, Backseat JJ, what he thinks of the back seats of the Honda Jazz. What do you think, mate? Check this shizzle out, JJ. This is absolutely crazy. This is the magic seats in their reclined position. You take the headrest off the top of the seat, you push the seat all the way forward, and then you fold the seat all the way back, and you just have this completely like flat area where you can just like lie back and chill out in your Jazz when you need a break. But if I then slide across to the seat behind JJ, the legroom is absolutely massive, and the headroom is absolutely massive as well. For this kind of car, for a small hatchback, it's just phenomenal. And then the view out, of course, there's so much glass. It's just really pleasant rear space. You've not really got much in terms of creature comforts and stuff, like there's no seat pockets on this car. I do have a place for a bottle in the door pocket, missing Jesus handles, but I've got electric windows. I've got headrests all the way across the back. You've got 3-point seat belts all the way across. You've got Isofix. You've got, you know, all the stuff you need. And back to JJ. So as well as lying the seats completely flat, as you've seen, you can also lift up the base of the seat, which then gives you this great big space in the centre of the car, and you can essentially walk through the middle of the car. It allows you to fit big objects, maybe like a big flat screen TV or something that you've just bought from Argos. And of course you can also lie the seats completely down flat, and that allows you to basically use the entire rear area of this car as a van and fit endless things in there, including a full-size bike with its wheels still attached, which is really impressive. All but the most basic Honda Jazz / Honda Fit came with a touchscreen in the centre console. That allowed you to do all of your sort of media and radio and playing music and things. It wasn't the very best system around for its time. If you wanted sat-nav with that touchscreen, then you'd have to get the sort of high-spec nav version of this car, because this car didn't come with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which is a big shame, but a lot of cars around that time, they didn't. The engine range was nice and simple in this car. There was only 2 engines available in the US and Europe. It was the 1.3 litre petrol engine with 100 horsepower, which was the most commonly sold one, and that did 0 to 60 in about 10.9 seconds. So it's actually not that slow. It's not slow enough that it can excuse all of those typical Honda Jazz drivers that you see holding up queues of traffic. It's a stereotype, but it really is true. There was also a 1.5 litre VTEC petrol engine, did 0 to 60 in 8.4 seconds, which is kind of ridiculous for this kind of car. If you went back to, well, let's say, the 1990s, 8.4 seconds was hot hatch territory, and 10-15 years later you can get it in a Honda Jazz. It was available with 2 different gearboxes, the 6-speed manual gearbox and a CVT automatic. Now, because this is Honda, I would highly recommend the manual gearbox, because that's one of the things that Honda have always been really great at, is building a very nice and easy to use and great feeling manual gearbox. Now the CVT will be fine, it'll be a perfectly usable auto gearbox, and it's not an automated manual like a lot of other cars, so it means that it's probably going to be a little bit more reliable and smoother. And then fuel economy in this car, with the 1.3 litre petrol engine, you can get 50 mpg out of it. It's a very frugal, small engine. A surprising thing about this car is the steering on it. It's really quite nice and sharp and accurate, especially when you're getting a pace on round corners, but unfortunately the rest of the car and the rest of the chassis really is obviously not designed for performance driving and handling. Despite that firm ride, it's got a fair bit of body roll. You just feel like you're going to understeer off the edge of the road if you're not careful, if you really do push it. Do you have a Honda Jazz or Honda Fit? I'd really like to know what you think of this 3rd generation model. Even if you've got like the 1st or 2nd gen, do you think you'd like to buy this 3rd generation one? And if you do have a 3rd generation one, what do you think of the car? Is it being a good car for you? I don't normally ask for subscribers, I just let you subscribe if you want to, but we're getting close to 10,000 subscribers now, and maybe by the time I've edited this video I'll be there, I don't know. It would be great if you have been watching a few of my videos just to hit that subscribe button. I know it basically makes almost no difference because most people just watch the videos through the algorithm and they don't look at their subscriptions list, but it is really useful for me, and also the like button as well. So is this 3rd generation a worthy successor to the 1st generation Jazz? Well, I'm going to say yes and no. It is, in the sense that it is improved in some ways, like it's got more rear leg room, it's got a nice 5-star Euro NCAP crash safety rating, it's a safer car, it's got nice sharp steering on it compared to the original Jazz, which steering was pretty terrible. In other ways, it's not really moved the game on. I don't think it's any more refined or quiet or relaxing to drive than the original car. It's still got that same firm ride, which is sort of boggles the mind why Honda have gone for that. Of course, if you were a fan of that original car and you want something more modern, something newer, then absolutely this car is a fantastic car, and of course it is still unrivaled practicality compared to any other car of its size. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you again for watching. If you want to see the video of the original Honda Jazz, then that's going to be up there, and appreciate you all very much, and I'll see you in the next video.